And here we go. At this point, I would like to refer you to a diary that I started on August 15th, 1945 and continued until September 2nd, 1945. It tells the story as it was happening, which is much better than my trying to recall events 50 years later. The diary's short, but I think it's worth including here. So basically, we end up with him getting released, and he starts tracking what's happening because he can. There were some Americans that were brought into the situation, and he starts keeping a little journal, as he said. And I'm just going to read a little bit from the journal. Americans working at the Japanese garage brought in news that about the same time that the war was definitely over. They said that a nip told them that Japan had surrendered at 9:30 o'clock on the 15th of August. These men were willing to bet anything on this dope. Yes, optimism reigned supreme, and I had never seen excitement such as this before. But such a heart-rending drop came a little while later when word was passed around that these 6 new men had been placed under lock and key in the guardhouse. Yes, morale rating was now 0-. Now we'll go August 17th. This morning we found out who these new men are. They are American volunteers who were flown over from China to take over this prison camp and to see that the Japanese did not mistreat us. Also, set up communications between here and our American forces. The story of their undertaking is very thrilling, and these men deserve a word of praise and credit for their brave deed. And then this happens. The American Assembly call was blown about 8 o'clock, and we formed outside where General Parker, the senior American official, made a speech. Before he would cut us in on the real dope, he told us that we must be calm and maintain a hold on ourselves. He emphatically stressed that there were to be no demonstrations. He proceeded to tell us of the armistice between America, England, the Netherlands, and Japan, which brought about a roaring cheer from the prisoners. But he warned us that we were still prisoners and that Japan and Russia were still at war. This little speech brought happiness to everyone, even though we knew what he was going to say before he started. This was the news that we had been waiting to hear for 3.5 years, and it was now official. Man, 3.5 years. So I just buzzed through this in an hour and 47 minutes right now, and this is 3.5 years. You got to get the book, and then you got to think about even more than what you read about in the book. We were still under Japanese guard, but the administration of the camp was taken over by Americans. We really chowed like we should have now that we had the keys to the storeroom. So boom, let's go. They start seeing Russian pursuit planes over the camp. Sunday the 19th, held church services today in thanksgiving for our war's ending. More Russian planes overhead today. The men really got a thrill out of seeing friendly planes again. They are all anxious to see the American Air Force and its large bombers that they have heard so much about. Monday, August 20th, we were told today that the Russians would be in camp. Saw our first B-24 bomber today at about 4:30. The prisoners really went wild with joy. It circled over the camp two or three times and dropped leaflets telling us about the war being over and for us to remain where we were until help arrived. These leaflets were late. They should have been dropped before the parachutists came in, and that's the rumor mill, the guys that had come in earlier. The Russians came in at about 7 o'clock, and did they cause great excitement? There was a general and 5 or 6 officers. The general called us together and gave us a speech. An American prisoner acted as an interpreter. The general said that from this day on, we were free and no longer under the hand of the Japanese. The crowd went wild with joy. Cheer after cheer rang through the air. He told us how in the last 10 days they had covered 1,000 kilometers of mountains, streams, and wilderness. More cheering from the crowd. He told us that he was in Berlin when Germany surrendered and met officers of the U.S. 8th Army. He said that he told them that he would soon be leaving to fight Japan and that he would set us free. also had a ceremony of the surrender of the Japanese guards and the turning over of their sabers and arms to the American guards. It was quite an interesting and strange spectacle. What made it appear strange was that it was performed in the light of the moon. The Russian general presented General Parker with a Japanese revolver. The ceremony was completed by the Russian general having the American guards parade the Japanese before the prisoners and off the parade ground. Man, the restraint is insane. I mean, yeah. It's hard for me. I've considered myself to be a pretty, emotionally controlled person, and I think if I was in that prison for 3.5 years and the war ended and the Japanese that had tortured and beat and starved, we might have a little something to talk about. I might have a little something for those guys, a little bit more than just marching them around the camp. Yeah. But you know what that shows you? It shows you that that's how professional the American soldier is, man. It's amazing. It's amazing. We got this from Unit 731, those books as well. The people that were being tortured, they got turned over by the Russians and said, do what you want with them. And the determination was, we're going to treat them humanely. Yeah. Back to the book, back to the diary. September 2nd, we've been having moving pictures, it means movies, for at least 2 nights. And I've never enjoyed anything so much before in all of my life. Being in prison camp for so long almost made me forget what was going on back in America. I am just beginning to realize now what I have missed. If I would have seen a movie 2 years ago, I'm afraid I would have tried to escape at any cost. If I would have realized what I was really missing, this long time in prison camp would have been much harder to bear. More sick left by plane today. Our new colonel told us that we would probably be out here for at least another month. What's a measly month more after having been here for so long? In fact, it is good to know that we will be leaving for home in only a month's time.
Yeah, when you kind of consider in his mind, it went from never to 1 month. So it's like, oh, all right, I could do that month.
Yeah, it's also interesting how he got detached from what the world had, and he actually found that beneficial. And I've talked about that. When the first interview I did with Tim Ferriss, I talked about how I kind of detached from what's going on, from pictures of my kids, and didn't hang them up because I didn't want to be thinking about that because I'm there to do the job. And you can see that he's saying he would have gone crazy and tried to escape if he'd known what he was missing. Back to the book. When we finally got to see what the Japanese had on their side of the prison camp, we were astonished and mad. They had a room full of mail and packages from the States that they never delivered, plus a large quantity of Red Cross packages. We speculated that the Japanese were living off our Red Cross packages when food became scarce, food that was meant for us. By now, since we were all free to leave prison camp and wander, everyone was looking for a Japanese saber to take home as a souvenir from the war. It would show that at long last, in the end, we were the winners and they were vanquished.